talking about performance support. How do we improve the peer services that we're delivering? So, this is an opportunity for us to get together about once a month and really flesh out some of the details about what we're doing and how we're doing it and how well we're doing it. Um, so, let me just suggest that we begin by just taking a moment to be silent and still. And I invite you to begin this by first giving yourself an affirmation for the unique value and worth that you bring to our community. And then, secondly, perhaps express gratitude to the elders and the ancients who paved the way to make the life that you currently enjoy possible. Maybe even going all the way back to the First Nations people. Here in Georgia, that would be the Creeks or Okmulgee or Cherokee or Seminoles. Of course, it's different where you are, but let's just take a moment to be silent and still.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence.
Thank you. Well, know what came up for you in that moment? I just know something did. And it always does for me anyway. And for me, it really is kind of significant to pay attention to that internal part of me. Um, I call it the Great Spirit. Depending on your faith tradition, it may be soul or spirit. But that's kind of the barometer by which I figure out is what I'm doing working or not. And I like this quote from George Eliot, who says, if we had a keen vision of all that's ordinary in human life, it would be like hearing the grass grow or the squirrel's heart beat, and we should die of that roar, which is the other side of silence. So we carry that with us everywhere. In fact, it never turns off. It's part of us, and I believe it's part of everybody, if not everything that exists. So part of my challenge is how do I kind of align that part of me with that part of you in a way that allows each of us to add value to the interactions that we have.
But like a compass seeking north, there lives in me a still, sure spirit heart. Clouds of doubt are cut asunder by the lightning and the thunder, shining from the compass of my heart.
So to me, that's fundamental to my effectiveness and the effectiveness of whatever services I'm providing. How do you align those compasses in a way that really brings value and worth to each individual and both of our contributions? So we will go to about 11 o'clock and just wanted to Again, say sorry about the delay in getting started. The micro gods are just not smiling on me today for whatever reason. But I think we've got all the bugs worked out. So, really, what I want to do today is talk about the vital role of peer feedback, and we'll take a few minutes to cover some of this material. But I really want this to be much more of an engaging conversation than a talking head presentation. And then I'm going to suggest 2 professional development tools that you may find useful for your own professional development. And then, I want to suggest some homework for you. So, maybe the best way to get this started is just to go over some engagement guidelines. And by the way, let me put into the chat box if you'll click on that link that's there. Oh, I'm not sure why my video is frozen. That's not good. I assume everybody can still hear me anyway, huh? If you can, put that into chat, let me know. Okay, good. Not sure what's the deal with the video, but okay. So click on that link, open this Google Doc, and you can follow along. And there's even a place for you to write down notes if you want to print this document real quickly. That'd be fine too. So, engagement guidelines. First of all, just know that multitasking is not productive or respectful or healthy. In fact, it's a myth. You literally cannot focus your attention on more than one thing at a time. So just bring all yourself into this conversation, and I ask that you spend the next 35, 40 minutes focusing your attention on this symposium. So, to create a sense of engaged community, I don't know if we can have everybody turn on their video cameras or not. Mine's apparently frozen and not working. So, it would be good if we could see each other's faces. And if you would unmute your microphone when you want to make a contribution, that'd be great. Otherwise, stay muted so we don't hear a bunch of background noise. If you promise not to check your email or your Insta face, etc., while we're here, I promise I won't waste your time. If you agree to look us in the eye and try to absorb what we're saying, I agree to be crisp, cogent, and on point. Excuse me. If you can encourage me and bring enthusiasm to our interaction, I can lean in to understand your perspective and reflect even more energy than what you're contributing. And the purpose of this e-meeting isn't to fulfill the allocated time. Our purpose is to communicate ideas and the associated emotions and to find out what could be better via engaged conversations. This is a technique referred to as appreciative inquiry. So, any other suggestions or ideas about what will make this a more safe and respectful place to maximize your learning today? You can either unmute or type them in chat, either one. Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, Lila, is there a way we can display video cameras or not? Lila is our technical genius.
Let me just see. I should be able to enable them for everyone.
Nice. Well, so while she's working on that, I want to invite each of you to unmute and introduce yourself. Tell us where you are and one thing you've done in the last week to have fun. Who wants to go first? How about Brian? So you should be able to enable your video camera if you're luckier than I am. There's Ian. Good morning, sir. And Aaron, nice. And Mr. Cooper.
I can go first if you want me to.
Certainly, go right ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name's Erin, and I am from Utica, New York, which is upstate, right near Syracuse. Thank you for having me. And one thing that I did fun this week was I bought a pair of roller skates, like the old school roller skates. So I plan on connecting to my inner child and going some skating this summer.
Very cool. Well, good luck.
Thank you. It's much scarier when you're an adult. I don't remember being this nervous about breaking a hip when I was little.
Without a doubt. But now, yeah, not so much. Mr. Condon, how are you? Ah, we can't hear you. How about Mr. Cropper? Are you able to unmute?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, good. My name is Robert Cropper. I'm from Martha's Vineyard with Martha's Vineyard Community Services, and I'm very glad to be here. And this week I, with the weather turning nicely, have started hiking in the very early morning in our state forest here. It's beautiful.
Wow. No doubt. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Mr. Glazer. Oh, you're still muted, I think. And you're not muted on that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there you go.
Okay, great. My name is Ilan. I live in Baltimore, and I run a group called Our Jewish Recovery. And something fun I did this week, I don't know, just cleaning the house for Passover count. Sure, we can call that fun.
Yeah.
Always nice to do some spring cleaning and get rid of things that no longer serve me.
Cool. Yeah, nothing like clean crib. So, Mr. Condon.
Hi. Can you hear me now?
Hi.
Yeah.
Can
you hear me now? A lot of echo here, but okay. So yeah, I'm doing well. And this one thing I did was in the nice weather, especially last week, it got out and took a couple of hikes. Especially last week, it was a little marshy, a little muddy, but it was so nice. It just changed my whole outlook. It just changed my whole outlook.
Spending a little time in nature does. It's amazing how just spending a little time in nature does. Well, I appreciate everybody being here. So, want to talk about viral fear? I'm hearing the echo too, but I'm not sure why. So, we'll do this the old-fashioned way. Don't worry about opening up the browser. So, if you would share with us your role. Are you a licensed medical professional? Are you a licensed behavioral health professional? Are you a certified or licensed addiction professional? Or are you a certified peer specialist or recovery coach? Are you a certified peer specialist supervisor? Do you identify as a person in recovery, or maybe you see yourself more as an ally of people in recovery? Or maybe you just discovered that you're actually in the wrong webinar, but you want to stay because this looks like it'll be interesting. So what are your Aaron's a CPRA and a recovery coordinator. Nice. Women in recovery and also a family member of a person in recovery. Very good. Ms. Kirwan is a recovery coach, substance abuse and trauma. Ms. Childers is a licensed medical professional and a licensed behavioral health professional. Very good. And Elon is a person in recovery and ally working on his RCP certification, and he leads a recovery organization. Good. Well, that's helpful. That helps me get a sense of the context within which you're working. So, I want to show you a little video. Hopefully this will work. It's only maybe 3 minutes long. And this is Dr. Michael Lambert, who is a psychologist who is one of the foremost experts in research on psychotherapy. And you may be asking yourself, why are we watching a video on psychotherapy when this is about peer services? And the answer I will give you to that is because there is no research yet on peer services and what makes them work. So we're going to take some lessons from the folks who've been doing this for 100 years or so in the psychotherapy arena. So I want to invite you to look for the answers to 2 vital questions. So what percentage of clients don't change, deteriorate, improve, or achieve recovery? And then what does Dr. Lambert suggest we do about treatment failures? And he's actually going to provide 3 suggested ways of addressing that. So let's see how this is going to work.
The question really becomes, can we see as people go through treatment that they're getting better or they're getting worse? And can we predict their final end of therapy functioning? And then can we alert clinicians to this?
And therapists, of course, are notoriously bad at doing this. We think that we can, given enough time and investment, we can change anybody. And that seems to be the attitude. Therapists, I guess, have been measured consistent to not be very good at predicting treatment failure.
Yeah, exactly right. First of all, there's a problem that about 8% of adults actually deteriorate, and about 40% don't change one way or the other.
In psychotherapy, yeah.
Yeah, in psychotherapy.
Uh-huh.
Then the second part of the problem is that clinicians are very optimistic about how their patients turn out and how they're doing in the course of therapy. They actually did a study on whether therapists could predict treatment failure. And the clinicians out there, although they're confident they can do this, so were our clinicians.
So let me back up because I want to.
The question really, clinicians.
Ah, dang it! Sorry. One more time.
The question really, be confident they can do this.
So let me get you to pay attention to the information that's on this screen. So what Dr. Lambert did was a study that involved asking practitioners, in this case psychotherapists, to predict who on their caseloads would be successful or not. And they had 550 clients, And at the beginning of the study, 3 of the clients were predicted to have negative outcomes. In fact, 40 had negative outcomes, and the psychotherapists were only able to predict 1 of the individuals who would have a negative outcome. So, bottom line is, psychotherapists think they know who's going to do well and who's not, and yet they can't. And I'm guessing that's probably true for peer services as well. I don't know about you, but I was not born with a crystal ball that tells me exactly what's going to happen with people who I work with. I have a gut sense sometimes of the likelihood that things are going to work or not. But I'm sure if you've been doing this work for a while, you've had those individuals that surprised you. Either you thought they were really going to do well and they didn't, or who you thought, no way, no how, and yet the person excelled and exceeded all expectations. And that's really what this research is getting at. So one of the things that we now know, given technology and the way it's being used, is that algorithms are in place that can take data that we put into the systems that we use that will correctly predict who is going to who's going to be successful and who's not, 85% of the time. So in 85% of the cases, there's a way for us to track who is actually making progress and who's not. And that's really the point that he's getting at
the
here.
question really becomes clinician.
So, based on this research, what percentage of clients don't change? It's somewhere between 40 to 60%. Now, I don't know about you, but that's shocking to me. 4 out of the 10 people that I work with aren't going to change or don't change, and there's a plethora of reasons. So we're not here to talk about why. It's just the fact that as much as 6 out of 10 folks don't change over the course of some period of intervention. And then another 3 to 15% actually get worse. And then 20 to 30% on average improve, and then between 9 and 20% actually achieve what you and I would refer to as stable or long-term recovery. Now, these are research-based numbers. This isn't George saying this is how it works. So, any of that surprise you, or any reactions to those numbers?
I think given how much the fellowships of recovery tend to say, it works if you work it and just come to the program and everything will be fine, I think it's not necessarily true.
And so what's the typical advice that's given? What slogan? What comes top of mind?
It works if you work it.
Yeah. It works if you work it.
Keep coming back.
And then what else? What other slogan? Okay.
Let go and let God.
So that brings in the spiritual element. Behaviorally, what are you suggested to do? Keep coming back. Right? So yeah, it works if you work it. And it really is about having that spiritual awakening and just keep coming back. And that, to me, there's nuggets of gold in that wisdom. and it's true. It's about whether or not people stay engaged, and how we, as peer recovery support service providers, how we do the work we do to encourage people to engage and stay engaged. Frankly, it's our responsibility. So, Miss Uren, I may have not pronounced your last name correctly.
Yes. Hello.
Doing
How are
well,
you?
thank you. So I see your question about what is this population, and this was in fact a study of 550 private practice clients who were coming to see psychotherapists. So say a little bit more about, in the UK, you've been challenged to choose who is more likely to be successful in treatment.
Well, we sit in on a few different committees and different discussions, and it was just really interesting when somebody said, well, how can we choose and pick the people that are going to be have the best chance of having a successful outcome from going to rehab, so that we can spend the government NHS budget to give it to the right people. And I just went, you can't decide, and how many chances is enough? And it just led to a lot of mixed feelings, because most areas in England get allotted a certain amount of money from the government to the NHS to provide treatment and rehabilitation places. And so people who maybe don't have recovery knowledge working within these departments are saying, how do we now decide who should get that money? Or if they have, say, 12 places, which 12 people should get it? And I just don't think that should be anything that even comes into the equation. We can't determine somebody's success, or outcome like that in a conversation without. But a lot of the people who are trying to make the decisions don't have the recovery knowledge, and I think that's where the problem starts.
Yeah. So it's almost kind of pick and choose who you want to allocate these resources to. Well, Miss or Mr. Kerwin, some of these patients were on medication. Many of them weren't, but so it was really a mixed population. So I appreciate, Ms. Uren, that focus on how do we maximize the likelihood that we're serving people who are going to benefit from the services that we provide. And based on Dr. Lambert's research, what we can do about failures or successes, for that matter, is pay attention to progress alarms. So in the process of having multiple interactions with people, are there ways that we can track those indicators that suggest progress isn't happening? And for those people who aren't making progress, have conversations about what needs to be done differently. And then there are clinical support tools. And then the one that I think is perhaps most relevant for us is getting feedback from the people that we're providing services to. How do the people you're providing services currently tell you things aren't going well? Well, most often they don't come back. So the real point that I'm getting to here is we can benefit from having conversations with the people who are receiving services by periodically and consistently saying, how's this working for you? What could be better? And ask it in a way that's genuine and earnest. And that's what leads us to the factors that we know, based upon over 1,000 studies that have been done in the last 50 years, on what factors are most associated with outcomes. And it ultimately boils down to the quality of the helping alliance.
Shazam!
So fundamentally, the peer or client's view of the quality of the helping relationship is of paramount importance. Whether you think you've got a good relationship with another person is not as relevant as whether that person thinks they've got a good relationship with you. And then there's two other factors. One is the agreement between the parties on what's our goal and what's our purpose. And then also the agreement on how we're going to make progress moving forward. What are the means or the methods that are going to be used? And then the fourth factor is the peer or the client's theory of mind or theory of change. How do you think you do best at producing behavior change? And all of that is what is built into what's called the session or relationship or group rating scale. So this is a copy of the group session rating scale. It's a really simple form. You can see there are 4 subscales on it. It should be administered about 5 minutes before the interaction ends. And if you get a score of 35 or less, and even if you don't, if you get scores above 35, the point really is to genuinely be curious about what could make the next interaction better. I want to suggest to you this is the golden question. This gets us to a place of really being able to share the responsibility for what happens during our interactions with the people who we're interacting with. Oh, you mean you can't read that? I appreciate the question. And actually, that's intentional. I want to use this opportunity to suggest to you that if someone's first language is not English, there's no better way of showing cultural competency than providing tools in the native language of the individual. And it just so happens that all of the Partners for Change Outcome Management System forms are available in 31 languages so far. So, yeah, this is the English versions of these. You can see on the left is the relationship rating scale. So if you're having individual interactions, 5 minutes before it's over with, you simply say, fill out this, put marks on this form. And did you feel understood, respected, and validated? Did we work on and talk about what you wanted to work on and talk about? Did you feel supported and encouraged in your change efforts? And then overall, do you think this relationship is right for you? And then on the left is the group session rating scale. Essentially the same process, same format. It's just something that's used when you're delivering group interactions. So 5 to 10 minutes before the interaction is over. Of course, for me, I need somebody to keep time to let me know, well, you've only got 5 minutes left. So if you're doing this in a group, I like to have a designated timekeeper. If I'm doing this as an individual interaction, I'll say we're going to be here for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 50 minutes, however long. And if you don't mind, pay attention to what time it is and let me know when we've got about 5 minutes left. And again, it's about sharing the responsibility for what happens during interactions with the people that we're interacting with. So again, 35 or less, ask with gratitude what would make the next interaction better or more useful. And if you're interested to get more information, there is a wonderful book by Dr. Barry Duncan called What's Right with You? Debunking dysfunctional myths in our lives. And this is a set of tools that are evidence-based practices that can be used to gather practice-based evidence of effectiveness. So, let me switch over from the PowerPoint and talk about some performance support tools. So again, if you click on the link that's in the chat box, it will take you to this document. Pardon me. I don't know about where y'all are, but the pollen is just incredible this year here in Georgia. So there are 2 professional development tools, or excuse me, let me back up. So if you're interested in learning more about PCOMs, we will be doing a CCAR webinar on Wednesday, April the 7th, starting at 10 o'clock, where we'll do a little deeper dive into the Partners for Change outcome management system. And the webinar is called You Do What and How Well? Love Your Data. And so part of what helps us become informed about the quality of our services is on a consistent and regular basis looking at our data. So we're gonna spend an hour and a half going through how to use the outcome rating scale, the relationship rating scale, and the group session rating scale. And if you haven't signed up and would like to, go to the CCAR training website and you'll see where the link is to register for that webinar. I'd love to have you. If you want to get a head start, simply go to outcomesnow.com. These are free. It costs you nothing other than a little time. There is a licensing agreement that simply asks you to agree to not change anything on the forms. They are copyrighted. But as a result of going through this training, you are free to use the scales. And again, we'll come back to this periodically as we have these performance support sessions and talk about what your experience is using these tools. And when you get to the page for the measures in Better Outcomes Now, down at the bottom, you'll see where the peer measures are. And that's the forms that you want to download in addition to the ones up above that are in the 31 different languages. So, 2 professional development tools that I want to suggest you take a look at using. And the first one is something for your personal development in the form of a peer service contact hours tracker. So how many hours have you done individual interactions? How many hours have you spent doing couple or family work or doing groups of some kind? So the first key performance indicator I want to suggest is being able to track this over time. I have over 14,000 hours of direct service experience that has been clinically supervised, meaning I've had supervisors and we processed what went well and what didn't and what I could do better to get, what I could do differently to get better at what I'm doing. So I invite you to start tracking your own service delivery, and how much of it you do matters. And this is a way of quantifying it. So if you click on the link that's in the handout, you can download this spreadsheet along with this one. This is your performance support hours. Now, I use the term performance support as a complementary term to what others might call supervision. I think supervision is typically more administrative in the sense of, are you following the policies and procedures and the rules of your organization? Performance support is more about how well are you providing the services that you are providing. And so the second key performance indicator is just tracking how much supervision or performance support have you received? And was it an individual performance support where you and one other person were talking about either what's going on with particular individuals, or maybe you did an audio recording of an interaction and you reviewed it and now you're meeting with this person to talk about what went well? Or maybe you did a write-up, a case report. But tracking those hours is relevant in order to be able to demonstrate that you're actually putting in the work. So, questions or comments about either one of these spreadsheets?
Thank you for giving this information for us to use. This is great.
You're very welcome. I was fortunate. I had a supervisor early on that said, yeah, you need to start paying attention to this. So here's some spreadsheets. And that was back in the day when, I mean, spreadsheets were a brand new thing. So you can imagine how long ago that was. But it's really been a blessing to be able to track this over time for me. So the website for the Partners for Change Outcome Management System is betteroutcomesnow.com. All right, so what about the homework? That's really the last thing I want to talk about. So I want to invite you to spend some time between now and next time we get together next month, looking at what are your program's process and outcome metrics. Meaning, what does your program count? So maybe it's the number of admissions that you have. Maybe it's the number of peers that are on your peer list. I don't know, clinicians call them cases and case loads. We don't typically use that language in the peer world. Maybe it's phase movements. You've got X number of people in phase 1 or phase 2 or phase 4 or whatever. Maybe it's the total number of interactions you have within a month. Maybe it's how many successful or unsuccessful transfers have occurred. Or in the clinical world, they talk about discharges. I don't know about you, but discharges, that's not, and they'll say successful or unsuccessful. Well, I prefer transfers to discharges simply because ideally we're not discharging somebody. We're simply transferring their care to some other organization or group of people. So that's why I use the the planned or unplanned transfer process in language instead of discharges. But what is it that your organization counts on a regular basis? And maybe this is information that gets reported back to service providers. Or maybe it's something that the supervisors discuss, or maybe it's the administrators and the reports that are sent to allies and funders about the quality and the outcomes of your service. What I'd like for you to do is to compile the list of outcome metrics or data that matter to your organization, because ultimately that's the barometer upon which we determine, are we accomplishing the mission of our organization? And yes, you should be able to say what the mission is of your organization. Do you know your organization's mission statement? Can you quote it in a way so that there's not a bunch of no? Can you say it and mean it as something that directs what you do in your services? And then secondly, what are the numbers that suggest whether or not you're actually accomplishing that mission? So what I'd invite you to do, pull those data elements. Maybe you've got a monthly report you fill out. Maybe there's a report that goes out to funders or others. And if you would, just enter the information, not the numbers, but the metrics themselves, what gets measured, into this spreadsheet for us to talk about next month. What questions do you have about this homework?
I don't have any questions. Our organization, our peer services, is really in the beginning stages of growth. So we are just starting to put these numbers together now. So it'll be interesting what we can come up with, including the websites that you just gave me. We can start using some of those surveys and whatnot. So thank you.
Very good. So if your organization is getting money from somebody, I assume they are, what is it that funder wants to see produced? What are the outcomes that they're after? Why are they giving you money? And what are the metrics that can be used to measure that? So it really is a two-part story. I'm sorry, go ahead.
This is really interesting and valuable for me right now, because we set up a community interest company in the UK in January. And our focus initially, when we set out the last year with our thoughts, it was about a recovery organization. And what has happened is we started to offer the CCAR training, and the recovery coach training has grown. And so that idea of refocusing the outcomes and really getting clear on it, because we never intended to just do training. It was all about community and collaboration and the outcomes that we were able to affect through introducing recovery coaching. So yeah, this has just come, I think, at the right time for me to kind of go back and refocus on what our original outcomes were. Because when I just sat here and thought, the number of collaborations, the number of projects that have started as a result of the introduction of recovery coaching, I know there have been so many, and now I'm going to have to go back and really look at a way to quantify that, because it would be very good stats for funding.
So I would suggest the data, the numbers are half of the story. So that's the quantitative side of it. There's also the qualitative, and it's about collecting the stories of the people who are successful and celebrating those stories out loud in community. So we're focusing now just on that quantitative piece, but know that there's that other side of it that's important too. And we'll get to that in a couple of months. Other questions about these outcome metrics and what I would like for you to do before we get together in April? Okay. Well, I do want to ask, so what is it you do well as a peer support service provider? Do you run groups? Do you do telephone contacts? Do you do recovery check-ins one-on-one? Well, the purpose of this performance support or collaborative is for us to share our best practices, things that you do well that you can teach us how you do it. And there's a place here where you can sign up. Just click on this here. It's also at the top of the form. And there's a little form where you simply put in your name and here's what I'd like to spend 15, 20 minutes talking about in a future learning collaborative session. So this really is a platform for us to learn from one another. And I don't intend on being the only voice that talks for the next however many months it is we get together. So that's the plan. And we'll get together once a month and review this information. And again, this is a Google form that will be updated after each of our meetings. So you can see that the information from last month's meeting is down here at the bottom. And we'll keep adding to this until we are able to really have some serious conversations about how we're getting better at doing what we do. And how do you know it? What's the evidence? So, quick 5-minute feedback. What did you like about today? And what might make the next interaction we have in April better? Oh, now y'all get quiet on me.
I'd just like to see some American faces because I miss my American friends and family, so this is really good.
Well, that's very
From the other side of the world. And I'm grateful that it's online because just to be able to access this from around the world is amazing.
And
So,
what
yeah,
time
thanks.
is it locally where you are?
Pardon?
What time is it locally where you are?
It is 3 o'clock in the afternoon here.
Oh, okay. Well, you can start your weekend.
Yeah. That's it. Just delivered a full day of Recovery Coach Academy and then zip straight onto here.
Very cool. Yeah, I think.
Okay. I was going to say thank you for the resources. They're great. And I was also wondering if there was any reason why we weren't using Zoom. Just because I've had problems with this platform.
Well, we'll have to let the good folks at CCAR answer that question. This is their preferred platform. And there's actually some advantages to it that you don't get with Zoom. But, Lila, anything else you want to add to that?
No, we have the Zoom debate a lot. For now, we're sticking with Adobe because of its capabilities, but Zoom has been a thought. So
Yeah. Every platform has advantages and disadvantages, and this one has some unique features that Zoom doesn't have, and yeah, more people may be familiar with Zoom, but thanks for asking.
Well, that was just my feedback, but I'll make sure and try to familiarize myself with the platform between now and the
Perfect.
next
Thank you,
meeting.
ma'am. Anybody else? What'd you like, or what can make the next interaction better?
I'm a visual person, so I like the fact that there was, talking plus the visuals, plus that there's, resources to use and things to think about for next group. I really enjoyed this a lot, so thank you very much. And I'm just looking forward to learning all that I can so that we can really grow our peer support program into the best that it can be, especially our community suffering right now. So whatever we can do to help our people, I'm open.
All right. Well, hopefully I'll get my video problem figured out before next time, so you don't have to look at that frozen picture of me the whole time. But I don't know, that might be better than actually seeing me live instead of just an ongoing picture of my ugly mug. Anyway, thank you all for joining us. We will reconvene next month, and perhaps see you in a couple weeks for the webinar on Love Your Data. Enjoy the rest of your day, and be well.